Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 127. A shocking revelation. As Hung Jun passed through the corridor, the glow of the moon above West Lake shone into the flowing clouds mountain villa. The night breeze blew past, making this summer night very cool and refreshing. He unconsciously glanced, only to see that Chu Yangxi was currently sitting in his room, his legs crossed, slowly and carefully pouring some glowing powder into a soda lime glass bottle. Hung Jun was curious, so he kicked off his wooden clogs and crept lightly in, kneeling down in front of the table. Chu Yangxi looked up and glanced at him, before smiling. "Help me hold this bottle." Hung Jun reached out to take it, but Chu Yangxi gestured that he should not use his hands. With that, Hung Jun called out the pentacolor sacred light to hold that bottle in place, and also carefully cradling the powder in Chu Yangxi's hands. "What is this?" "The ashes of Yeming's bones," Chu Yangxi said quietly. "I'll be bringing them back into the tower tomorrow." After Chu Yangxi had returned home, his entire personality had grown more leisurely and he was a lot more casual. He went around with his upper body bare, revealing the muscled lines of his torso. In the exorcism department, Hung Jun had usually seen such a sight. After all of them were men, and they never really averted their eyes. Even if he himself and Li Jinglong or Lu Su and Mo Rijin were in relationship, everyone strutted around, used to wearing nothing more than a pair of thin, short underpants as they swaggered on by. Only Chu Yangxi did not go around with his torso bare. When the weather was hot, as soon as Hung Jun returned to the exorcism department, he had wanted to do nothing more than to strip off all his clothes. Atai and Ashinakayan were foreigners, and they were even more relaxed in their dress. But even when the weather was the hottest, Chu Yangxi still wore his inner shirt and his white pants. Li Jinglong's explanation for this was that scholars' families had good manners, and as long as there were outsiders around, they were used to dressing neatly. And it was only after coming to the Flowing Clouds mountain villa that Hung Jun finally saw Chu Yangxi walk around half naked for the first time. Chu Yangxi was tall and broad. He looked even a little bit sturdier than Li Jinglong. Like this, he didn't look like a scholar at all. As Hung Jun glanced out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly let out a questioning "Yi." Chu Yangxi smiled secretively, and he said, "Don't tell them." Along Chu Yangxi's shoulders and back was a faint pattern of dragon scales. Once all of the ashes were poured into the bottle, Chu Yangxi sealed it properly. He then pulled out a stack of yellow papers and brought over a small dish. Hung Jun, upon seeing that he was about to draw some talismans, took the cinnabar and helped him mix it. "You've seen his father before." In the tea room, Li Jinglong had a premonition that this old man, Chu, might end up revealing some mystery from back then. Far more than having simply seen him, Chu smiled, suddenly looking exhausted. "Are his parents still alive?" "They passed away," Li Jinglong replied. "Oh, Chu let out a long sigh. He nodded and continued, oh well. I imagine that quite a few years have passed. Does that child know of his parents' identities?" Li Jinglong suddenly remembered that every time Hung Jun brought up his background, he had basically only spoken of his father, Kong Xian, and had rarely mentioned his mother. Only Imperial Consort Yang had mentioned before that Hung Jun's mother's side of the family was the Jia clan of Hungnang, and his mother's name was Jia Yuz. Many years ago, due to a plague in Hungnang, their clan had scattered. "His father was Mahamayuri," Li Jinglong replied, after searching his thoughts for a moment. "His mother was a mortal." "How could a mortal carry the devil seed in her womb?" Chu asked meaningfully. This sentence stunned Li Jinglong, and he sensed that the contents of this conversation between him and Chu tonight would have an incredible piece of information. "Are mortals unable to bear the seed of Mara?" Li Jinglong asked. "Please impart your teachings upon me." "Yao have Yao poison," Chu said, "and when they seek pleasure with mortals, they will die in a year or two." How many offspring between mortals and those of the Yao tribes have you seen? Li Jinglong was immediately reminded of that peony Yao and the scholar, and he said, but, medicine can dispel the Yao poison, is that not true? Qiu Qiu asked, how is it dispelled? Why don't you teach me? So, Li Jinglong explained the entire process of creating and administering the medicine that Hung Jun had mixed, using the poison of the corpse ghost king. A revelation came to Qiu Qiu, and he stroked his beard. Very smart, very smart. This kid's like his father, he's a doctor. Wait, Li Jinglong was already a little confused, because this demonstrated the truth of Qiu Qiu's words. He searched his thoughts for a moment, before saying, when Kong Xian was still alive, the time he met with the corpse ghost king. Hung Jun had already been born. Technically then, he couldn't have used their poison, which is to say. From the very beginning, Kong Xian hadn't made Jia Yu's any sort of antidote, but not only had Jia Yu survived, she had even given birth to Hung Jun. Li Jinglong was uncertain as to how much difficulty lay in carrying the seed of Mara to term and successfully giving birth to it, but how could that have happened then, if it had been as they had said, that Jia Yu's was immortal? Have you ever seen Yeji? Qiu Qiu then asked. She was truly very beautiful, and now that I think about it, that beauty was truly one of a kind in this world. It's a great pity that that child doesn't resemble her. Li Jinglong was even more confused, and he said, wait. Yeji is Hung Jun's mother? But his mother's name wasn't Yeji, it was Jia Yu's. Jia Yu's, Qiu Qiu nodded. Where did her soul end up reincarnating? Li Jinglong. Li Jinglong looked up at Qiu Qiu and asked, you know his mother? I do, Qiu Qiu said. 135 years ago, when she gave birth to Yangtze, it was I who was by her side then. These words came down at him with the force of a thunderclap exploding in Li Jinglong's ears. Qiu Qiu's words had long since gone beyond what he could understand, and he actually thought for a moment that this graybeard was joking with him. You, Li Jinglong was frowning heavily. How old are you this year? According to the reckoning in the human realm, I am already over 180 years old, Qiu Qiu replied. But when Yeming was still here, the passage of time in the tower and the passage of time in the mortal realm were different. One day in the tower was 1 year in the human realm. Ah, I've grown old, I've grown old. Qiu Yangtze pulled the yellow papers apart. Hung Jun slumped on the table, watching him draw the talismans. With a lift of his left hand, Qiu Yangtze dipped his brush into the cinnabar, his right hand holding a book, on which was written crooked lines of ancient characters. Hung Jun began to chuckle. What are you laughing at? Qiu Yangtze asked seriously. You still need to consult a book. Hung Jun asked. You haven't done your homework. Qiu Yangtze replied, I don't want to bother memorizing them. I never liked drawing talismans as a kid. Who taught you to draw talismans? Hung Jun asked. Qiu Yangtze replied, Grandpa. A thought came to Hung Jun, and he wondered about how although they had been here for so long, he had never seen Qiu Yangtze's parents. He had never heard him mention his parents before either, so there might be a lot of stories there. Hung Jun was a little curious, but when he thought about it in the end, he figured he should be considerate, so he didn't end up asking Qiu Yangtze in order to prevent him from being sad. They're dead, Qiu Yangtze replied with a smile, seeming to have guessed at what Hung Jun was thinking. Hung Jun nodded. My condolences. Qiu Yangtze began to draw the talismans. A stroke down and to the left, another down and to the right, a circle, twisting this way and that. He continued, did you also want to ask how my parents died? Hung Jun replied, don't think about it any longer. I have never even seen their faces, Qiu Yangtze said. Grandpa only said that someone else brought about my parents' deaths. Who was it? Hung Jun asked curiously. Qiu Yangtze shook his head and replied, their enemy has already long since died as well. He was killed. Hung Jun thought, then where did the scales on your body come from? You've guessed correctly, Chu Yongxi smiled, seemingly once again guessing at Hung Jun's inner thoughts. My father was a dragon. Hung Jun. Chu Yongxi finished drawing one of the talismans, and he set it to the side. He looked up at Hung Jun, before turning to the side and asking, do you want to touch them? Can I? Hung Jun was very curious. Chu Yongxi chuckled. As long as Zhenqi doesn't stumble across us, otherwise I'll get another beating. Then it's okay. Hung Jun face-palmed at that. If Chu Yongxi hadn't mentioned that, then Hung Jun wouldn't have thought of it. The two of them were on their own late in the night, and if Li Jinglong came and saw Hung Jun touching Chu Yongxi, he probably wouldn't be able to wash that misunderstanding away even if he jumped into the Yellow River. Look, Chu Yongxi pointed out. I have them here as well. Chu Yongxi turned around. The traces of the dragon scales were very light, but under the glow of the moonlight, they glimmered slightly. The silvery white was easily distinguishable, and it traveled along his shoulders and back to his waist, where they were hidden from view by his long pants. Hung Jun exclaimed, your father was a dragon. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be very shocked, but Hung Jun's dad was a peacock, and his adopted father was a phoenix, so his surprise upon seeing that Chu Yongxi had a dragon's blood running in his veins was only at the level of hello, so you are also a half Yao. When he thought about it like that, the exorcism department was basically overrun with them, if he counted the grey wolf and the white deer. Atai and Ashinakayang better not also be Yao, otherwise, in the end, Li Jinglong would end up as the only real actual mortal. That would truly be a grand joke that the heavens played on them then. I'm lying to you, Chu Yongxi chuckled. My dad was not a dragon. If he was one, would he have still died at the hands of a human? When Hung Jun thought about it, he figured that that was a good point. My mother's labor was difficult when she was giving birth to me, Chu Yongxi said, so grandpa took her into the dragon subduing tower and begged a dragon to help her successfully give birth to me. That dragon then gifted her one of its breaths, so I was born with these markings on me. Oh, Hung Jun nodded. He then added, but with these dragon scales on you, you're really too handsome. Chu Yongxi drew 4 talismans and handed them to Hung Jun, who laid them out. Chu Yongxi continued, I like to chat idly with you. Our family's Hung Jun is very well versed in the ways of the world, and you don't get surprised over every little thing. Well versed in the ways of the world didn't really apply to Hung Jun, but not getting surprised over every little thing did. Hung Jun's focus had never been on other people's identities, origins, or family backgrounds. He glanced at the talismans drying by his hand, and he asked, what are these talismans for? Chu Yongxi replied, they're for setting up an array. When I enter the tower, I'll place them with the bottle. What effect will they have? Hung Jun asked. The world will revolve around it, opening up the most important gate, Chu Yongxi replied easily, lowering his head to draw the talisman. It will cause time in the tower to grow very, very slow. How slow, you ask? If you're in the tower, you basically won't be able to sense the passage of time, but in the human realm, the vast seas will have long since become mulberry fields. Li Jinglong, 135 years. Chu, 135 years. Li Jinglong felt as if he was dreaming, and he stared at Chu, wondering if he should go find him a doctor. He said, you're telling me that Chu Yongxi's mother and Hung Jun's mother were the same person? They're brothers. Chu Yongxi is 135, yet Hung Jun is just barely 17 this year. That's exactly right, Chu said. To be accurate, their mothers were both reincarnations of Yeji that existed in one of the myriad worlds. Who's Yeji? Li Jinglong asked disbelievingly. When Chu mentioned this name, a smile appeared on his wizened face. Even his wrinkles grew wrinkles as he smiled as innocently as a child, replying, a very, very beautiful girl. Li Jinglong said, wait. I really can't wrap my head around this. Old, senior, you swear that you're not lying to me? Pa. Qiu Qiu grew mad. What would I be lying to a junior for? For the sake of my own amusement. Li Jinglong almost roared despairingly inside, you were using me for your own amusement anyways, weren't you? Their gazes met for a split second, before Qiu Qiu seemed to sink into a long-distant memory. 135 years ago, the day that Yangtze was born, was also the day that his father was hanged. In that cycle, his mother's name was Li Shunning. Yangtze was born in the tower. The breadth of the vast Han River, like the emptiness of melancholy, cannot be swum across. The immeasurable length of the Han River, like the vastness of sorrow, cannot be navigated. After Shunning gave birth to him, she named him Yangtze, and he took my surname. After she left the dragon-subduing tower, she vanished without a trace. She and I made a promise, Qiu Qiu continued, that no matter how much time passed or where she was, as long as she was alive, she had to come to West Lake, to see me again, and to see her and Amo's child. Inside that tea room, Li Jinglong had already been so stunned that he was unable to say something for a long time. Eh? Amo, Li Jinglong said. That's Yangtze's father? The Amo that I know of. Exactly. Qiu Qiu poured out more tea into the bowls on the table, before handing one to Li Jinglong. When Li Jinglong took it, his hand was shaking. 100 years or so ago, this so-called Amo had another name that rang like a thunderclap, Yang Guang. At some point in time, she died, Qiu Qiu said absent-mindedly. When she appeared again in front of me, she had already reincarnated into a new body and started over from the beginning. She had forgotten everything, yet she still remembered her promise to me. She forgot that she had a child, who was in the dragon-subduing tower. She had a new home and a new lover. For a moment, Qiu Qiu could not win out against his sobs, yet he continued on, as if Li Jinglong wasn't there. She had another child. He met Yangtze, and today, I feel as if all of that was fate. And this fate also involved Xiaoyu, because in the beginning, if it hadn't stolen Yeming's ashes and brought them out of the dragon-subduing tower, these two children may never have met each other to begin with. How old is your grandpa? Hung Jun asked. How old do you think he is? Qiu Yangtze asked in reply. Hung Jun guessed 80, 90, 100, but Qiu Yangtze smiled and shook his head every time. In the end, he said, I don't know either. Sometimes, he's in the tower, and sometimes he's outside, so his age has become muddled, to the point where he can't even calculate it clearly. According to the accounting in the human realm, it has probably already been over 100 years since the year he said he was born. Xiaoyu escaped 200 years ago, Hung Jun said, curious. After Yeming's ashes were taken out, wouldn't the flow of time in the tower have returned to normal? Yeming's dragon souls are still there, Qiu Yangtze said. It's just that the power of its souls is growing weaker and weaker. 200 years ago, after Xiaoyu killed it, its Hanpo were still maintaining the seal of time in the tower with difficulty. In the beginning, 1 day in the tower was equivalent to 1 year in the human realm. Later, it became 2 days, then 3, and as the years went on, the passage of time in the tower grew faster and faster. What will be the result of that? Hung Jun asked. As soon as Yeming's dragon souls completely vanish, the flow of time inside the tower and outside will become the same, Qiu Yangtze said. The seal will completely lose effect, and will no longer be able to be patched up. Will the dragons escape then? Hung Jun asked. Qiu Yangtze replied, the dragons who entered willingly won't, but the Jiao shut in the lower levels will. The human realm will fall into great chaos, and they will be even more troublesome to deal with than Mara. How many are there? Hung Jun asked, frowning. Several thousand. Qiu Yangtze finished drawing the last talisman, and he spread all 9 of them out, before smiling at Hung Jun. Tens of thousands. I've never counted them. Hung Jun thought, that's truly more than enough to have to deal with. A single Xiaoyu could make Chang'an fall into such chaos. If several thousand were to attack at once, they would even be able to tear down the Taihang Mountains. Though Xiaoyu is different, Qiu Yangxi said. When it escaped, it brought with it Yeming's ashes. These ashes have the power to turn back cause and effect, and without those, it is nothing more than an ordinary evil Qiao. End chapter. Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 128. The Dragon Subduing Immortal. Hung Jun nodded, and the 2 of them fell silent, waiting for the talismans to dry. Qiu Yangxi glanced at him, before chuckling and saying, "Say, do you think these 9 talismans will be dry tomorrow morning?" "They're already almost done," Hung Jun said. "It won't take until the morning. I, however, wish that they wouldn't dry for another 100 years, Qiu Yangxi suddenly said. "It's a pity that won't be the case." Hung Jun. Both of them waited for a while longer. Hung Jun yawned. He was a little sleepy, but he forced away his sleepiness. Just as he was about to tell Qiu Yangxi that he wanted to go back to his room to sleep, however, Qiu Yangxi suddenly said, "Don't talk, Hung Jun. Just this is fine." Hung Jun. A gust of wind blew on by, and the talismans fluttered gently. Qiu Yangxi studied Hung Jun, before smiling. "You're probably sleepy, aren't you?" Hung Jun was fighting to keep his eyes open, and he n-ed. Qiu Yangxi said, "Let's go then." And saying this, he gathered up the talismans and rose. Hung Jun didn't understand what he was doing, but he rose to his feet as well and picked up the bottle for him. Qiu Yangxi added, "Wait for me for a bit." Qiu Yangxi went to go tidy up some things, and when he came out again, he had changed into a set of brilliant armor. He wore a dragon helmet on his head, the armor on his body shining with the brilliance of the celestial bodies, a belt of flowing clouds clasped around his waist, and cloud-patterned martial boots on his feet. The sides of his boots, the pauldrons on his shoulders, and his helmet were also decorated with cloud-like wings that furled upwards. "Are you going into the tower right away?" Hung Jun asked. "Why aren't you waiting until tomorrow?" Qiu Yangxi seemed to be a little sad, and he said, "It's better to finish what I started today." Hung Jun kept feeling that something was wrong, yet he couldn't put his finger on it. He studied Qiu Yangxi, feeling as if he had become a completely different person, someone who embodied the majesty of an emperor even more than Li Longji did. It was true that clothes make a man, just as gold makes a Buddha. Very faintly, Qiu Yangxi had a bit of that severe majesty about him that Ashinakayan also had when he had summoned that Zoroastrian god of war. He also looked as valiant as the leader of the divine troops that all the novels described. "Don't I look like an actor in a play?" Qiu Yangxi was evidently not very used to wearing armor. "This helmet is too clunky." "You look so good." Hung Jun praised sincerely. "You should draw yourself." "Oh?" Qiu Yangxi asked. "As a door god." "Let's go." He smiled as he slung an arm over Hung Jun's shoulder, circling through the backyard. There was a small path there that led towards a circular platform out in front of the 9-story tower. "Do you remember that day in the exorcism department, when we played music and sang?" Qiu Yangxi said smilingly as he walked. "I remember." Hung Jun's memories of that day were very vivid. Just as everyone had been singing and making music, the door suddenly fell in, revealing Li Jinglong and Feng Changqing, their expressions twisted into grimaces. Afterwards, everyone often brought that up, all of them remembering that day as one of the happiest moments in their lives. "And the nightingale of the spring dawn," Qiu Yangxi continued as he kept walking. "Thanks to Zhenqi's grace." In the tea room, Li Jinglong did his best to recall everything that didn't line up with conventional logic. He protested, "Isn't Li Bai Yangxi's cousin?" That's their Li family's relatives, Qiu Qiu continued. They're quite distant, so everyone just ends up calling each other by seniority. Li Jinglong asked, why are you telling me all of this? Qiu Qiu replied, I want to know, before Yeji died in this reincarnation, if she said anything. My years are coming to an end, and if I were to enter the tower again, I would not be able to hold out for long. I simply wish to see her once again before I die. Even if it's just a single glance, that will be good enough. Li Jinglong said, I don't know. Hung Jun has never mentioned his mother before. Li Jinglong rose, evidently a little dazed. When he looked back at Qiu Qiu again, he was frowning deeply. His original plans of asking after the whereabouts of the artifacts of Akala from the dragon-subduing saint had long since been cast out past the 9 heavens. It has nothing to do with you, Qiu Qiu replied, amused, so what are you so shocked for? When Li Jinglong thought about that, that was true. Though Hung Jun and Qiu Yangxi were related in this way, they couldn't be considered brothers based on that. After all, the past reincarnation of Yeji and this reincarnation had fallen in love with different people, so how could they be lumped together? Evidently, that wouldn't do, otherwise how many people could claim each other as relatives in this world? But he still felt odd. This matter could clearly be treated as nothing more than a bit of entertainment that didn't affect him, yet he had no way to treat it so lightly. So that was how Yangxi's life was, Li Jinglong said in the end. He didn't have an easy time of it either. He grew up in the tower, Qiu Qiu explained. I have never told him about his relation to the Yang family, so I must ask you to keep that a secret as well. He is a very good child, and was very precocious ever since he was small. He accepted everything that I told him, and he has never dissented. This old man is going to be in the dirt soon, and after I die, I'm afraid that he'll be very lonely. After all, throughout his entire childhood, he has never had many friends. Li Jinglong had originally thought, upon seeing that Qiu Yangxi was well versed in all the fine arts of tea, paintings, calligraphy, and chess, that he had been born into a rich family, a family of exorcists, and would naturally have had a group of friends about him in his hometown. He hadn't expected that Qiu Yangxi would actually have been the same as himself, wildly divergent from what he had imagined. He often wrote me letters, Qiu Qiu continued. He likes you all very much. It's just that this child has always smiled a lot ever since he was young, and doesn't like to talk about his feelings with anyone else, especially his brothers, because he'll grow embarrassed if he talks too much. In these next few days, I'll have to ask you all to keep him company quite a bit. After all, he's about to enter the tower. What does that mean? Li Jinglong asked. The vast seas turn into mulberry fields, and the ways of the world shift and change, Qiu Qiu said meaningfully. But in the dragon-subduing immortal's life, there is only ever this tower. The hot springs that day were really nice. They were too hot in the summer. Jinglong promised to take us there again in the winter. There was no door into the dragon-subduing tower, and when they walked to the platform, Hung Jun and Qiu Yangxi came to a stop on it, looking towards the tower in the distance. That tower was actually floating, and a colorful light was shining out from below it. Qiu Yangxi fussed over his helmet being too cumbersome, so he took it off and held it instead. With his long hair tied up, he looked as if he had transformed from being a scholar into a great general who would have to take to the battlefield at any moment to kill his enemies. He turned to face Hung Jun and took that bottle, smiling as he said, "The first time that I saw you, I had a strange premonition." Hung Jun studied Qiu Yangxi and said in response, "I also always felt as if I knew you from somewhere, but I could never figure out where." Hung Jun recalled the feeling he had when he and Qiu Yangxi had first gone to investigate the Fox Yao case. The feeling of familiarity that Qiu Yangxi stirred up in him were those of a dependable older brother. "I felt that," Qiu Yangxi said, "if there came a day where I would be standing here, then the person that would accompany me on this last stretch of road would perhaps be you." Now that we're here, I see that it was indeed you. Wait. Hung Jun started to feel that things were taking a turn for the worse. What does that mean? Yangxiga, what are you going to do? Qiu Yangxi turned his head to look towards the dragon-subduing tower, before looking back at Hung Jun. Repairing the barrier of time in the tower requires me to pour all my magic into the spell. Accomplishing the entire process will take a whole 200 days. Hung Jun. The flow of time in the tower, Qiu Yangxi said. To fix this flow of time, which is to say, the slow process of the seal losing effectiveness after Xiaoyu escaped from the tower, I will need to first reverse it, then stop the entire array. That is to say, you'll have to stay inside for 200 years. Hung Jun asked disbelievingly. Qiu Yangxi nodded. No, Hung Jun said, panicking. How could you not discuss this with everyone beforehand? Qiu Yangxi replied, I originally thought of doing so as well. What if I were to bid everyone farewell tomorrow morning? After all, we've been together for so long, and every member of the exorcism department is like a family member to me. But when I thought about how this round of farewells would only add to the grief, I figured. He seemed to be a little sorrowful, yet he smiled at Hung Jun. But Xiaoyu hasn't been captured and brought back. Hung Jun protested. And Mara hasn't been dealt with either. How can you go in just like that? Can't you wait a little longer? As time goes on, the passage of time in the tower will grow faster and faster, Qiu Yangxi said. With every day that I spend dallying, that is one more day where it will change. Zhenji will get rid of Xiaoyu in my place. It is no longer important whether it is apprehended or not. Hung Jun had never thought that the final destination of this journey would actually be a farewell with Qiu Yangxi. Hung Jun said subconsciously, I'll go get Zhenji. You can't do this. Yangxi. Qiu Yangxi simply watched Hung Jun quietly, before reaching out an arm, beckoning to him. Hung Jun stared fixedly at Qiu Yangxi, so Qiu Yangxi pulled him against himself, and with the armor in between them, hugged him tightly. Take good care of yourself, Qiu Yangxi said quietly. Tell everyone that I've left and to not miss me too much. Tell Atai that he doesn't need to return the money he borrowed from me the last time we went to Pinkongli, but remember not to tell him that in front of Tu Reinduct. Hung Jun hugged Qiu Yangxi around his waist, tilting his head to press against his chest. For a time, his heart swelled with emotion, and he couldn't find words to express what he was feeling. He was still unable to accept that all of this was happening, and he felt as if he was dreaming. Qiu Yangxi splayed his right hand out, and the calligraphy brush in his hand spun. 1,000 points of starlight poured forth gently from the tip of the brush, coating the entirety of the circular platform, and instantly, the platform transformed into a huge teleportation array, which began to slowly rotate. Right after that, he pressed his left hand down on Hung Jun's shoulder, forcefully pushing him away. With a burst of energy, he pushed Hung Jun out past the circular platform. But it was just at this very moment that Hung Jun suddenly saw, not far behind Qiu Yangxi, as well of black qi slowly suffusing the air of the grove. What's that? Hung Jun wondered. I'll be going now, Qiu Yangxi said. Hung Jun, until next time. Wait, Hung Jun saw that the black qi was growing denser and denser, but he hadn't yet realized what was going on. Evidently, this wasn't supposed to be here, but in the span of a few short breaths, Hung Jun suddenly let out an infuriated roar. Li Jinglong. As Hung Jun let out that loud shout, Qiu Yangxi hurriedly said, Don't shout. Right after that, the black qi exploded outwards, shooting towards Qiu Yangxi. From the midst of that black qi appeared a writhing Qiao, which roared as it charged towards the two of them. In the blink of an eye, Qiu Yangxi sensed that something was wrong, and as soon as he turned back, the black qi seeping through the moonlit grove was reflected in his eyes. That black qi gathered into a swift arrow that shot into the teleportation array, cleanly striking the soda lime glass bottle in Qiu Yangxi's hand. With a crisp ding, the glass bottle left his hand and went flying through the air in an arc, landing outside the array. The teleportation array was spinning faster and faster, while the forms of the nine-tailed heavenly fox, Fei Ao, the snow woman, and so on appeared from within the black chi. They flew out past the black chiao, each of them attempting to snatch up the bottle. But Hung Jun was even faster. He kicked off thin air and rose into the sky, first charging into the array, where he stepped onto Qiu Yangxi's shoulders, then turned and kicked out in the air. He executed a complete somersault in midair, snatching the bottle right back. Qiu Yangxi swiftly pulled out the brush at his belt and waved it through the air, while he grabbed Hung Jun with his other hand and bellowed, "Get out, quickly." Hung Jun's fingers had just so happened to stretch a half a kun, where they landed on the glass bottle, and with the crook of his fingers, he gripped it firmly in his hand. Blue light filled the world. On that circular platform, there was a huge, brilliant explosion, which reached even the heavens. It immediately engulfed the two of them in the blazing blue flames. Xiaoyu slammed into the outside of the blazing circle of flames, only to be instantly blocked by the teleportation barrier. It roared as it was bounced backwards into the distance. As Li Jinglong passed through the corridor, his heart began to thump violently. That was something that had never happened before, and his instincts told him that the violent churning of Hung Jun's emotions had affected him. Hung Jun. But before he finished speaking, there was a boom in the distance. This was not long after the members of the exorcism department had retired for the night, and with that, everyone rushed outside again, only to see a pillar of light shooting into the heavens. Li Jinglong asked reflexively, "Where's Hung Jun?" Everyone else was here except for Hung Jun, and instantly, Li Jinglong felt a sense of foreboding. Outside that glowing pillar of blue light that shot into the heavens, a black dragon roared as it flew into the air, slamming heavily into the blue light to no avail, before turning and charging towards the top of the dragon-subduing tower. "Xiaoyu!" Qiu roared angrily as he arrived in the corridor. "It's that bastard!" Li Jinglong immediately pulled out the sword of wisdom and began to run towards the mountains in the rear. The sun rose above the Heluo basin. The merchant caravan was washing up by the side of a stream, and a hired hand carried the cage that the carpiao was in, immersing it in the water. The carpiao still had its sluggish expression on, and after it was soaked for a long while, it was lifted out of the water again. It lay, dripping wet, in the cage, not moving at all. "This thing isn't doing any acrobatics." "Oh, come on. It's just a carp. You think it can breathe fire or something? It might as well jump around a bit, don't you think? The boss spent quite a few pieces of silver to buy it." Oh well," the boss of the caravan said. "We'll bring it into Fanyang today, and if we can't sell it, then we will let it go." When the carpiao heard the words "let it go," its gills twitched and its eyes rotated slightly backwards. It glanced at the group, but as soon as the boss approached it, the carpiao's eyes once again adopted their sluggish stare. "Say, what do you think this carp is thinking about all day long? What else are fish thinking about but earthworms?" A hired hand had caught an earthworm and tried to feed it to the carpiao, but the carpiao didn't eat it, as if it was going on a hunger strike. Its mouth twitched, so the hired hand grabbed a chopstick and put the worm in its mouth, before prodding it a little inside. He then ignored it altogether and prepared to set off. The earthworm could escape the carpiao's mouth, and it wriggled its way out. The carpiao, however, was starving, so while the group wasn't paying it any attention, it hurriedly stuffed the earthworm back into its mouth, swallowing it whole. Early in the morning, the caravan entered the city of Fanyang. Compared to when the boss of the caravan had come here the year before, this city was now filled with a nervous energy. First, the gate guards inspected their goods meticulously several times, and only after verifying their identities did they let them in. And when they entered, the city was filled with blacksmiths, with sparks flying off the iron they were working. Dense smoke billowed forth, as if the city was covered with dark clouds. There were more metal implements on sale, and the entirety of Fanyang was filled with flying ashes and sparks, as if it was an ancient city on fire. The people that passed to and fro had bitter expressions on, and their faces were streaked with ash, while the streets were filled with patrolling guards. The caravan waited in the market for a half a day, but was unable to sell anything or buy much. They had originally planned that this would be their last stop, only to find out that all their merchandise was under strict control. "Look here, hey," the boss of the caravan called woodenly. "There's a Yaogwai here." Finally, since no one was successful in doing business, they rented out a stall and, after adding things up, had no choice but to sell the Yaogwai. The Carpiao had never garnered much interest that in Luoyang and other similar places, they hadn't been able to sell it off. After standing there for a long while, the boss of the caravan could only accept that his luck was bad, but just as he was about to open the door of the cage and let the Carpiao go, he felt a bit of regret. Losing money was one thing, but the two pheasants had also escaped because of it. The boss, cursing as he went, kicked the cage door. Suddenly, there were hoofbeats, and behind him a woman's voice asked, "Oh, a Yaogwai." The boss turned, only to see a female commander wearing a set of armor, her clothes embroidered with the sigil of a soldier under An Lushan's command. He hurriedly detailed the Carpiao's origins. The female commander didn't have any troops with her. She simply glanced at the boss. "What's the price of this fish?" the female commander asked. The boss hurried to smile and lifted 4 fingers, saying, "I bought it in Chenkang, and spent a large fortune on purchasing such a monstrosity." The female commander glanced at the Carpiao, before she whistled, and the soldiers performing inspections along the street came over. "Fetch 400 taels," the female commander said. The boss was immediately shocked by this, but he was well trained, and he calmed himself again. The Carpiao turned its head, studying that female commander out of one of its eyes. Without waiting to pay, the woman reached out a hand and gestured at the boss, who hurriedly handed the cage over. The Carpiao, fish, and cage, dangled on the side of the saddle, and it rolled back and forth in its cage as it was taken away. "She isn't going to eat me, is she?" was the Carpiao's first thought. What would happen to it now? But logically, no one would use 400 taels to buy a Carpiao, only to steam or braise it. As long as it wasn't killed and was allowed out of its cage now and then for a walk, it would be able to escape. It remembered the general route that they had taken, and even if it didn't, all it would have to do was to go against the currents of the Yellow River, then go into the Jing River, where it would also be able to enter Chang'an. But what was the point of entering Chang'an? The exorcism department no longer wanted it. Hung Jun had sat inside listening to it shout for a long while, but hadn't come out to open the door. When it thought about how it had no home to return to, its entire fishy life seemed to have lost all hope. The cage was tossed onto the ground. The Carpiao hadn't even noticed where it was now, but it looked like it was a general's manor, and they had entered the female commander's room. The commander turned and took off her armor, before glancing in the mirror. "Do you know how to talk?" the female commander asked. There was no one in the room, so evidently these words were spoken for the Carpiao to listen to. The Carpiao grabbed the bars of the cage, but did not speak for a long time. "You look pretty dumb," the female commander continued, smiling. "You haven't cultivated a human form yet, have you?" And as she spoke, the female commander took off her inner robes, revealing her beautiful, ivory body, and she added casually, "If you weren't cultivating properly, how'd you end up getting captured by humans?" The Carpiao stared at that female commander, only to see that upon taking off all her clothes, she bent over to touch her heels. Right after, from the heel on up, she tore open her flesh, pulling off the skin all over her body like she was pulling a garment off over her head. She tore it off, revealing bloody flesh beneath. The Carpiao's soul immediately flew away, and it shrieked. Yao Guai. End chapter.